Welcome to this latest edition of Ril Dil Podcast, episode 886, the new NBA. I'm your host, of course, Ril Dil Quinn, discussing the world of sports and pop culture. Of course, we are finally set with the NBA Finals. It'll be the Nuggets and the Heat on Thursday in Denver. Denver has home court, of course, with Boston falling in 7 games. Should be a fun series. We will discuss that series. We're going to discuss the finals later on in the podcast because we got to get to the carnage that still remains at the what used to be called, not the Boston Garden, but it's, at the TD Bank Center. They changed the name so many times I can't even keep up. It used to be the Fleet Center, but the carnage that's left in Boston. And I was thinking about this. I think I'd rather be swept. I think I'd rather be swept than to be down 3-0, come back and get spanked on my own home court by 20 points or 19 points. I think I actually rather be swept. I think I'd rather get swept. I mean, because if you get swept, listen, if you get swept, it's clear that your team just wasn't good enough. You might need to make a coaching change. There's clarity to getting swept. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, there are questions. Your team has questions, but you should know the answers to those questions. With coming back from a 3-0 deficit to tie the series and then to get smoked at your home, in Game 7, it's just it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And it clearly described none of this series as a whole was very bizarre. It didn't make sense, but it made all the sense in the world. Before we get to Boston, because I had plenty on Boston, got a lot on the Celtics. We had the deep dive on the Celtics. Miami clearly, I don't want to hear today that Boston was a better team. They're not. Was Boston a more talented team? Yes. Would I rather have Boston's roster than Miami's roster? Yes. Shit. I'd rather have Boston's roster than probably anybody else's roster in the league, to be honest with you, with the type of talent, young talent that they have and depth that they have coming off the bench. The bottom line is Miami was and is a tougher basketball team. Miami was tougher than Milwaukee. They were tougher than the Knicks, and they were tougher than the Heat. And there is something to be said about mental toughness. But what is toughness in professional sports in 2023? Toughness is not getting in somebody's face, rah, 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 all that bullshit and barking. No. That's not toughness. Toughness is losing a heartbreaking loss at your home place when you are literally 0.1 seconds away from the finals at home, having to fly to Boston, basically being on the cusp of being on the worst part of history as far as NBA history, going to 3-0 lead, bouncing back and taking it to a team that was favored to get to the finals, taking it to a team that was favored to win the championship, or was the second favorite behind Milwaukee to win the championship before these playoffs began in terms of the Boston Celtics. And winning against a team that has, no one has won more Game 7 games than the Boston Celtics over the course of their history. No one has a better winning percentage in terms of with at least 5 Game 7s played than the Boston Celtics. That's toughness. And the Miami Heat embodied all of that. And it starts from the top. It starts with Pat Riley, you go to Eric Spoelstra, Jimmy Butler, and so on and so on. And that's what Boston doesn't have right now. Sure, they're an excellent organization. All right, matter of fact, I'm gonna get to Boston. Let me say the Boston stuff. As far as this game goes, and if you notice, I'm not talking much about the game because it frankly was not much of a game. After, especially fourth quarter, it was just Miami just completely took control late in the third quarter. Early in the fourth quarter, they, of course, they just, annihilated the Celtics. Really, Miami was in control from this game from start to finish. Boston only had 15 first quarter points. Miami set the tone. That's what you want to do when you're on the road in a game 7. You want to hit first, because a home team can come back from a big deficit. I've seen it before. Lakers, Blazers, Lakers, Portland 2000. But you get down on the road, you can be knocked out in the first quarter easily. We've seen it tons of times. You can be knocked out in the first quarter. You can be knocked out in the second quarter on the road. So Miami was very important for Miami. Coming off that Game 6 disaster, to hit first. They hit Boston first. They catch the break, of course. Unfortunately, for Boston with the Jason Tatum injury, ankle, he was never the same. But I don't want to hear any excuses, because he played 43 minutes and he did have 11 rebounds. I know he only got up 13 shots. He clearly was hampered. We know he couldn't move defensively. We know that he didn't have nowhere near the explosion. Probably was playing at 50%, 60%, whatever you want to know. He was not the Jason Tatum that the Boston Celtics needed last night. But hey, injuries are an unfortunate part of sports, basketball. I hate to see it, but that was not the reason why the Celtics lost that game. Celtics lost that game because they shot 9 of 42 from the three-point line. The Celtics lost that game because their second best player, a player who I'm fond of in terms of his game, in Brown, Jaylen Brown. I'm a big Jaylen Brown fan. Big Jaylen Brown fan in terms of his game. Had one of the worst playoff games of his career. 8 turnovers, 1 of 9 from the three-point line, and just looked totally lost. He looked completely lost. I'm not gonna say he was scared. He just was trying too hard. The whole Boston team, with the exception of Derek White, was in essence trying too hard to compensate, because they knew, as a player, when your top guy is not right. They knew that Jason Tatum wasn't right. And they knew that they would have to pick it up for them to have any chance of winning that game. But Boston, just came out, and they finished 9 for 42 from the 3-point line. They started the game 0 for 12 from the 3-point line. You had Shaq cracking jokes saying, basically saying, I don't know if it was this is the halftime or in the post game, and the after show, basically saying, if someone kept shooting after 10 missed shots or 12 missed shots, I'm gonna punch that dude. I'm gonna punch him in the face. Like, stop shooting threes. They looked for a second. I thought they were going to seriously challenge for Houston's record for the 27 straight missed threes back in 2018. They were missing threes at that rate, that poorly. They eventually made a couple in the second quarter. They had a 26-point second quarter to kind of like stabilize the game. Miami, but again, I never thought that Boston was in this game, that Boston was ever going to win this game. You give Miami all the credit in the world. Miami, again, they hit first. Caleb Martin, who should have been the MVP of the Eastern Conference, and I'll talk more about that, but he should have been the MVP of the Eastern Conference. He was phenomenal. He had like 26 and 10. 26 and 10, 25 rebounds the last 2 games. For the series, he goes 19 and 6, 60% from the field, 49% from the 3-point line. He was there. He was clearly the most consistent player. And again, but it comes down to name recognition. Nobody knows who Caleb Martin is if you're not a serious basketball fan. So I said it on my text thread. Caleb Martin should get it, but Jimmy Butler will get it. Jimmy Butler beats Caleb Martin out by 1 vote for the MVP. And I think for the MVP, the Eastern Conference MVP, they need to treat that like the NHL treats the Conn Smythe. There's a reason why Jimmy Butler won it was what he did previously in the previous series against Milwaukee and also New York. So let's make it an award that celebrates the entire Eastern Conference, that's a culmination of the entire Eastern Conference playoffs. Similar to, like I said, what the Conn Smythe is a culmination of the entire Stanley Cup playoffs, and you get rewarded for that. You don't just there's no Stanley Cup Finals MVP. There's just a Conn Smythe is the whole shebang, the whole entire playoffs in the NHL. I would say I still have the NBA Finals MVP. I wouldn't touch that because the finals is a separate entity versus the rest of the playoffs. But I think for the conference finals MVP, you can accumulate the first three rounds and judge it by that. Because that's why Jimmy Butler won the award. He won the award for what he done in the previous series. He had in essence three and a half good games. He had a good game one, good game two. They didn't need him in game three. He didn't play well in game three. Games 4 and 5, he was terrible. Game 6, he was terrible up until like the last quarter, the last 2 minutes. The last quarter, he had 15 points. In this game, he was solid. He had a very good game. In this game, made some big shots. Made some big shots in the third quarter, and finished it off in the fourth quarter. But he had a very good game in this game. So I would say he had basically 3.5 good, 3.25 good games. Caleb Martin was solid, was consistent throughout this entire series. The only reason Jimmy Butler averaged more points because he took more shots than Caleb Martin, which is expected. He is Butler is their number one guy. That's the only reason. I mean, Butler for the series averaged 24 points. Caleb Martin averaged 19. And the only reason, like I said, the only reason he averaged more points was he took more shots. But as far as efficiency, as far as who was the guy that hurt the Celtics the most in this series, it was Caleb Martin. And I guarantee you, any Celtic would in their right mind would tell you that if you gave him the truth serum. But Caleb Martin eventually is going to make, if he keeps playing like this and has a good year next year, he's going to get his money. He's going to eventually get paid. But he was phenomenal in this series. I mean, he was just absolutely phenomenal. He was fearless. You would have thought that this guy was like, if you didn't know anything about the NBA and hadn't watched, if you were not a basketball fan, you just started watching the basketball, like in this particular series, you would think Caleb Martin was one of the top 10 players in basketball, or top. You would think he was an all-star. You're like, well, wait a minute, he's not an all-star. That's the level he played at. Again, he was absolutely fearless in this series, and Miami, they are kind of ahead. I want to say they are ahead of the curve here. As far as how you look at them having 7 undrafted free agents, look at guys like Martin, Vincent, Duncan Robinson was great. I thought Duncan, especially last 2 games, I know he missed 2 big threes in the last game, but they don't even sniff that comeback isn't possible in game 6 if not for Duncan Robinson's fourth quarter. Some of the plays he made, some of the shots he made. You saw Duncan Robinson taking people off the dribble, cutting, passing. He blocked a shot last night. Maybe that was game 6 where he blocked a shot and then took someone off the dribble. But Duncan Robinson was great in this series. Like Duncan Robinson, he shot the lights out, and his defense was good enough to keep him on the floor. Remember, in past postseasons, especially the last couple of postseasons, that was the issue with Duncan Robinson. He couldn't stay on the floor because of how poorly he was on the defensive end. That was not the case in this series. He was tremendous. Their role players. Those role players were spectacular. Even Highsmith, the limited time he got, starting in game 6, he picked Jason Tatum clean with something that that's how I knew you knew Jason Tatum wasn't right, because he never gets picked like that. He picks his pocket and leads to a layup. And Miami's ahead of the curve. They're frankly ahead of the curve as an organization because the way, and I'm not going to go too heavy into the CBA. I'm not going to go too heavy into it for this podcast, but the way the CBA is going to be constructed, it is not going to lend itself to teams stacking their rosters. You're not going to be able to have 3 and 4 all-stars. Those days, those super team days were over to me beforehand. Now they are absolutely officially over from that standpoint. You are going to have to draft well. You're going to have to player develop well. You're going to have to find a number of hidden gems. Yes, you're going to have money to get 2 stars on your team, to pay a couple of stars, but outside of that, you want to do it the way Miami is doing it. And you look at Miami's 4-year run, they go finals, first round, conference finals, NBA finals. That's a hell of a run. It's a hell of a run for 4 years. And that is almost, without winning a championship, that is almost as good as it gets, because for this new NBA, You're not going to be able to stack your teams like that. You're not going to be able to sign a lot of veteran players unless veteran players are just going to pay for next to peanuts or no money. You are going, as a team contending for a championship, or any team for that matter, you're going to be hamstrung, hands tied with this new CBA coming up. This new CBA is going to change the way teams have to construct their rosters, change their philosophies in terms of how they spend their money with the luxury tax. I'm telling you right now. So Miami is already ahead of the curve in terms of how they run their organization with the player development, with the discipline, with the culture. Like, they have guys, they're gonna find a lot of guys. They're gonna find someone else's, trash and turn them into gems. That's all it is, to turn them to treasures. That's all it is to it. Like, they're gonna, like, Caleb Martin got released by the Hornets, which doesn't say much for the Hornets, but we were not even talking about Caleb Martin like 2 years ago. He barely played. He actually was on the team last year. Been playing game 7 last year. Averaged, about, I want to say 7 points for the series, something like that. Got limited minutes, but it was not a major factor. It was not a factor whatsoever in terms of last year's conference finals. He just wasn't. So that is, that Miami is already ahead of the curve as far as how important your front office is going to be drafting, development talent, and they are well deserving of going to the NBA Finals this year. And we'll talk more about them when we preview the finals. As far as, so quick little stat here. Of course, I gave you the 3-point stats. Well, I have some more 3-point stats. So for the series, Boston shoots 30% for the series from 3-point line. 30% on 267 attempts. Miami on 209 attempts, right? 58 less attempts. They shoot 43%. And actually, Miami made, despite the fact that they had 58 less attempts, Miami actually outshot Boston in terms of 3-pointers made, 89-81. So, yeah, you can shoot the 3, but how you utilize it is a whole nother story. And one team actually, made shots. But one team, that tells me that Miami just got better shots and took better shots. Since the bubble, now I'm excluding the bubble because there was no home court advantage in the bubble. So I'm excluding the bubble. So road teams in game 7s, excluding the bubble, are 9-7 since 2018 in game 7s. I'll repeat that. Road teams in since 2018 in the playoffs are 9-7 in game 7s on the road. It used to be a time where if you had game 7, it was an automatic, basically, win for the team. Like, just automatic. Like, you would see, like, Houston was the first one that it stood out that a team won a game 7 on the road. To me, as a kid growing up, like, that stood out because you did not see it. Growing up, once a team got game 7 on the road, and normally more times than not it would be a blowout. It would, like, you would see Chicago beat the Knicks in a game 7 in '92. You would see the Pistons, beat the Bulls a couple times in game 7s. I think in '89 and '90, maybe '89 was in 6 games. '90 was definitely a game. They beat them in game 7 before the Bulls overcame them in '91. I mean, many times, like, it was rare that a team won a game 7 on the road. It just didn't happen. But again, there's not the home court advantage. Home court advantage is just not what it used to be. It's just not. But I mean, you still rather have it, but it's definitely not the end all be all. A couple game 7. Of course, the Lakers, went on the road years back and took out Sacramento, and that, I'm sure Sacramento remembers that as a series to forget, especially games 6 and 7 if you're Sacramento for other reasons. But it's very rare that you win a game 7. It used to be very rare that you would win a game 7 on the road. Now it's happening a lot. Especially, I mean, we saw the finals in 16 with LeBron taking out Golden State. I mean, we seen Golden State do it we seen Golden State do it to Houston. They got Houston and who won 65 games that year in 2018. I mean, LeBron's done it, to Boston. Did it Boston in 2018 in a game 7. So it happens. It's happening more often than not. And even in these playoffs, I mean, you saw it with Golden State. Saw it with Golden State last year. Saw it with Boston against Miami. So it's happening a lot in the 2020s, in the decade of the 2010s, and now the 2020s. So we get to Boston. We'll talk more about Miami when we look at we do a finals preview. So what's next for the Celtics? You finished with the second best record in basketball behind Milwaukee. You were one of the favorites to win the championship. You do get to your 4th conference finals in 6 years. Your 5th in 7 years since 2017. So they were in the conference finals in 17, 18, 20, 22, and 23. So they have been one of the most consistent franchises over the last 6 or 7 years. They've won a lot of games. They've won a lot of playoff series. They got to the finals last year, had a 2-win lead, lost to a all-time great immortal player in Steph Curry, excuse me. So, and that was fine with that loss. They weren't supposed to win the championship last year. They weren't. They just were not. Golden State had the experience. Steph Curry was the best player. I'm always big on experience in the finals. That was and so I don't punish them for not winning a championship last year. This year, this is a major. This is I'll say it. I'm sorry, Giannis. This is a failure. This is a major failure for that franchise because you lost to it. First of all, anybody will tell you in basketball, coaches, players, losing home playoff games, game 7s are the worst. That's if you have a home playoff game, a home game 7, that means that you're probably the better team and we're the better team in the regular season, and that's a game that you should win. So those are rough losses. Injuries were standing again. This series was not lost because of Jason Tatum's ankle. This series was lost in games 1 and 2. To be honest with you, when they lost the first 2 games at home to Miami, that's when the series was lost. There's a reason why no team has come back from 0-3 and now 151 times in the history of the NBA. It probably was going to, knowing the way the game is headed now, it's probably going to happen one of these days, one of these years, one in the next 3 or 4 years. It's probably going to happen, but there's a reason why it hasn't happened. So for Boston, if I'm Boston, if I'm ownership, Brad Stevens, the people that call shots, I'm not. You cannot panic. You can't panic, because despite despite what happened last night, you still have a lot going for you as far as the roster, as far as the culture. I would not fire the coach. To me, he did enough to turn around this series, to get to a game 7, to say that he could get another year and grow and develop, continue to improve and grow and develop as a head coach in this league. Now, I did not like his answer in the post game when he was asked, did this team rely too much on the 3-point shot? He said, no. Yeah, you actually did. So I didn't like, but that again, that's a tough spot. That's right after just a brutal loss at your home court in the game 7. I'll give him a pass on that, a semi pass on that. If you had the organization, right, and there's some things about Mazzulla that I do like. His temperament, he has a very level head. Doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He seems to have a great perspective on life, which is important with coaching and dealing with people. And whatever we told the players in those last 3 games, minus Game 7, they clearly listened. So it's not like you can say that that the players tuned him out, that or that he's not capable of reaching the players. He clearly did reach them. Boston needs a shift in philosophy. There's nothing wrong with shooting threes. We know the math. We know the analytics of it. We know we get it. You hit 40%. That means somebody else has to hit 60% of twos. We understand that, right? You just gotta have more. You can't win a championship being a one-trick pony. And it became more about making or missing threes than it became about defense. Last year, Boston was a defense-first basketball team, period. It was defense first, threes second. This year, it was threes first, defense second. That's not going to win you championships. It's just not. And again, you have to know how to use the three-point shot. The three-point shot is like candy. It's sweet, but too much of it can make you sick. You have to know how to use it. Because, more times than not, you hear the old adage, live by a 3, die by a 3. More times than not, I've seen teams completely die by the 3. I think the misnomer of watching Golden State all these years is the fact that, we get enamored with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant when he was on there. They made a lot of layups. They used the 3 to get a lot of layups and dunks for some of their bigs inside. Whether it was Kevon Looney, JaVale McGee. They got a lot of easy shots with how they utilize the three-point shot. There will be times when they utilize the three-point shot as a decoy for some of their split actions and for some of their stuff for guys cutting to the rim. I mean, don't count how many layups, if you watch a Golden State game in the past 4 or 5 years, how many layups Curry or some of the other guys get on cuts because of the threat of the three-point shot. It's not just about jacking up three-point shot, just jacking up threes. And some of the threes they were taking were contested. Some of the threes were those threes that Boston was taking early in the shot clock. One pass threes. And it completely defined their identity as a basketball team. They became known as, hey, if we make this amount of threes, then we'll win. If we don't make it, then we're probably going to lose. That's not how to build a basketball team. And Brad Stevens, ownership, or preferably Brad Stevens, has to, talk to Joe Mazzulla and be like, hey, Joe, we like you as a coach. You have to explain to us what next year is going to look like. What did you learn from this year? What in regards to the 3-point? Especially, I would just get right to it. Like, if I was Brad Stevens, I would just say, hey, we took too many threes. We took too many threes, and how are we going to use how is this going to change moving forward? Something has to change. I'm not going to get into all the roster tweaking. I would not. First of all, I'll say this: I would not trade Jaylen Brown. I would not trade Jaylen Brown unless Jaylen Brown. Now, if Jaylen Brown is going to be off without offering the full max, yes, the $295 million, absolutely. Because someone else, you can't have a situation where Jaylen Brown is not in a contract going into next season. You just can't. That can't happen unless you feel like you want to trade him right now, which I don't think they do. I'm not breaking up the Tatum Brown twosome. I'm not. They're too young, too talented. There's a clear number 1 and a clear number 2. You're not getting a better number 2 than Jaylen Brown, especially with the new CBA, and can afford to keep some of the players that you need for your core. You're just not. Jaylen Brown is going to be probably the best number 2 that you can get. You're not getting a better number two. So you trade for him, and then you have to, again, that's chemistry. You have to like you have to bring in some new guys to learn the system like that. No, you have that twosome is fine. They just got to get better. Jaylen Brown can get better. Jason Tatum can get better. Like, we need to stop looking for easy outs. Well, let's trade him or fire the coach. No, this is what player and organizational development should look like. Your people should be able to coach them up. Or if you're a general manager, the coach can get better. Everybody can get better. If everybody gets better, we don't have to try to make all these moves out of panic and emotional and frustration. Now, certain teams have to make moves. Like Phoenix is going to have to make moves. They can't. It goes without saying. Milwaukee is going to have to make a move. I don't think Boston has to make a lot of moves. If you want to move, sure. You want to move off Horford, sure. Or they might not be able to afford a couple of players based on this new SPA. That might be. They might not have a choice. But the core of this team, Brown, Tatum, Smart, Derek White, those guys should be back. Those guys absolutely should be back. Now, Robert Williams, I don't know what they might lose him, possibly. But that core four should be back. And it's just a matter of everybody getting better. And I'm talking from the coach on down. No, Brown's only 26, Tatum's only 25. They can get better. Steph Curry didn't win a championship to what? He's aged, 27? Like, Golden State was one of the rare young teams in the recent memory that won a championship. I mean, even going back to when the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq. Yeah, Kobe is 21, but Shaq was 29. They had other veteran players like Brian Shaw, Ron Harper, Horace Grant. Those guys were veterans. Robert Horry, those guys had been in the league 8 or 9 years. They had Kobe, Derek Fisher, Devin George were basically the only young players. The rest of those guys, Glenn Rice, those guys were all veterans in their late 20s, early 30s. So I'm not. I think the best thing bad for Boston as a franchise to do is to take a deep breath, take a couple of days as a franchise, gather yourselves, and not get caught up in just Boston needs this, Boston needs that. Boston does not need a lot. They just need to get better within. Most of Boston's work has to come within. They lost this series because they lost to a team that is better coached than them, and they lost to a team that understands who and what they are in terms of their identity. That's why they lost this series. As far as the finals goes, listen, I think this is going to be a spectacular finals. Does the Denver deserve to be the favorites? Absolutely. Denver is well rested. They have the best player in the series. They have two of the three best players. I would say, if I'm ranking the top three players, Jokic, Butler, and Murray, they have home court. They're playing great basketball. But what they don't have that Miami has is finals experience. Now, outside, KCP, of course, has finals experience. Miami has a ton of finals experience. Miami could get back Miami probably is going to get back Tyler Hero, and they're going to need all the firepower they can get because they're going to have to score some points against this Denver team. But it would be foolish of me or anybody else to discount the Miami Heat. You can discount them all you want. Denver is a overwhelming favorite. The last line I saw was 8. I saw it when it was as high as 8.5, which for game 1. And I'm like, listen, Denver has never been to the NBA Finals, and I like coaching advantage. I give to Eric Spoelstra. I like Malone, but Spoelstra is a superior coach. Experience, I give the advantage to Miami, and intangibles, I give the advantage to Miami. I think Denver has the best player in home court, and I would pick Denver in 7. But I'm not. If a couple of weeks from now we're sitting here on June 19th and the Miami Heat are your 2023 NBA champions, will I be shocked? No. Because that's what the NBA right now, there's no dominant team. Denver's not these playoffs have looked the way they've looked for a reason. Like, let's not treat Denver like Golden State 2017, 2018. They're not. They're not. They are a very good team with a great, great player. They have some nice pieces. As far as strategy, if I'm Miami, I'm Jokic. I have to make Jokic a scorer. If Jokic gets 35 to 40 in the series, so be it. I'm focusing on keeping him off the offensive glass, and I'm focusing on making sure that he doesn't have double digits in assists. I'm shutting everybody. My main focus would be Jamal Murray. That's really the guy I would try to take out this series. I would try to take him out this. That's the guy. Jokic is going to be Jokic. Jokic is going to get numbers, and like that's all there is to it. He's just that dominant of a player right now. He's been the best player in the playoffs. But the guy who you can't let beat you is Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray destroyed the Lakers in that series. He averaged 32 and 6 and shot 50%, 52% and over 40% from the 3-point line. Like he can't put up those I need to bring those numbers down to around 23 and 25 and 45%, 44%. And, maybe 35 to 38% from 3. Like, those numbers need to come all the way down. And again, I think people forget how close that Lakers series was with Denver. It was a close, if there's such thing as a close 4-game sweep, that it was that. So, I'll take Denver in 7. I think it's a very closely contested series. I'll be certainly interested to see how Miami defends that Jokic, Murray, pick and roll, which is the most probably lethal offensive set in basketball right now. Jimmy Butler probably has to match Jokic as far as if Jokic could be the best player. I mean, Miami could win even if Jokic is the best player in the series, but Jimmy Butler has to be damn close to Jokic as the either 1A or a close number 2 in terms of being dominant. Butler has to play much better than what he played in the series against the series against Boston. He has to play. They need Milwaukee Butler. They need that version of Jimmy Butler. Okay, they need that version of Jimmy Butler for them to win this series. So again, I will never doubt Eric Spoelstra. As far as I've heard a lot of people thinking that Denver is going to run over Miami. That's not going to happen. Tell you right, that's not going to be. Forget about sweep. This series, will go no less than 6 games, and I think it'll be a competitive 6 games. It won't be a 3-1 6 games. It'll be a 2-2, 6 or 7 game series. I have it. Denver in 6. Denver in 7. We're going to end the program talking about the loss of a legend, of course, late last week. Tina Turner passed away at the age of 83. 180 million albums sold, 12-time Grammy winner, the queen of rock and roll, a survivor, an icon, a visionary. She was all those things. Before I butcher my playlist from Tidal somehow, don't even ask. I'm still pissed off about that. I had GoldenEye. What else? From Tina Turner. We don't need another hero. And I think I had the best. No, GoldenEye and We Don't Need Another Hero. Those are the songs I had from Tina Turner that were stuck on my playlist this past year. I watched the Tina Turner documentary from HBO a couple of years ago and rewatched it over the weekend. And you forget she was actually 83 years old. Picture that you're seeing the picture that you see, this face that you see right now, that picture probably is least 20, 25 years old. That looks like the same picture. Her face looks the same as she did. This picture looks like she did when she was getting interviewed by Larry King in '97. It was somewhere that looks like late '90s, early 2000s. That's the vision that I always had. The picture that I always had of Tina Turner. Like I never thought this woman would ever age. So when I saw the documentary, it's kind of throwing back a little bit, but a little bit. Of course, yes. As you get old enough, it doesn't matter. How much you take care of yourself. You're going to age and things, wrinkles, things of that nature. She still, and for somebody 83, she looked phenomenal. I'm not trying to say she looked bad, but this is the vision picture that I always had of Tina Turner, who just defied everything. She performed like well into her 60s, maybe even early 70s. She was performing. She did things. She did it her way in the latter part of her latter part of her career. She lived with her husband and died in Switzerland with a longtime husband. I would say the thing that jumped out to her that jumped out for me is just like the reinvention when she broke off from Ike Turner and what that took. I don't think people realize, like, once she got her name, she was doing Vegas. She was on the Vegas Strip, Cabaret, Hollywood Square. She was doing anything for money as far as performance, because she was no longer had the comfort from a financial standpoint. Sure, of course, she went through hell with the domestic violence from Ike Turner, but from a financial standpoint, she had to do it. She had to do it on her own in a sense. And remember, she's doing this like she's late 30s, early 40s. Normally at a time when like women performing normally at a time where people will be trying to put you out the pasture. To be honest with you, in terms of where she was at, in terms of where like a lot of performers are at in their careers, or some performers were at in their careers. I mean, a lot of people thought that the best of her was Ike and Tina. And when she comes out, in '85, what's love got to do with it? And her, the latter part of her career, the post Ike Turner, when she cuts her hair, reinvents herself, that was just that was another chapter, a new chapter in what was a just iconic career from basically from start to finish. And like I said, I look back at her catalog as far as individual albums. It was not even Private Dancer. I don't consider that to be a classic album per se, but I think where she separates herself from a lot of artists is her songs were albums. Like GoldenEye to me was like an album. And I listened to Simply the Best was like an album. We Don't Need Another Hero was like listening to an album. That's how layered and powerful these songs that she had, and how gifted, how great these songs were. So it doesn't matter if you don't have. It doesn't matter if you have classic albums. If you're delivering those level of hits and that get played endlessly and still to this day, that's when you're at another level. And she would have fit in perfectly with this time, with how artists can become stars without having great albums. You just need hits. You have a number of hits, you're good. Like Drake hasn't had a classic album. Just a bunch of hits. But again, she survivor, icon, visionary. She was all those things and lived a long and lived a complete and full life. Tina Turner, dead at the age of 83. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Ril Dil Podcast. This podcast will be up by tomorrow. We will do a podcast we'll do a Sunday podcast. We'll look back at Game 1 finals and also preview Game 2 on Sunday. I'm thinking, on Sunday. So I will see you. You will hear from me later on in the week. Enjoy the rest of your night, the rest of your week. So long.